Many of you guys may not have heard of Capucine. She is a beautiful French model with a face to die for, okay? But she lived a pretty interesting life and had a pretty tragic end. She was always surrounded by so much controversy, rumors, and everyone hated her that were her peers and people that were around her. She did have a few famous friends like Brigitte Bardot and Audrey Hepburn, which I did videos for, but for the most part, men and women alike didn't really like her because they felt like she was always seducing the most powerful men in the industry to get ahead. And she was she was a plant. She wasn't talented. But amongst those rumors, there was always a rumor that seemed to follow her around, that she was actually a man. She was not even a woman. Yeah, along with these rumors and the tragedy that was her life, Capucine ended up throwing herself on the 8th floor of her apartment building to her tragic end at such a young age. We're going to talk about how did she end up there? What happened? When did it become too much for her? But first, hey friend, welcome to my channel, Korean Allude, where we break down and deep dive the most iconic stars through history. If you're not yet subscribed, please be sure to do so. And if you're already subscribed, please turn on your notification bell so you never miss an upload. Now, without further ado, let's get into this video. Capucine, the enchanting French model turned actress, had the power to make one of Hollywood's most influential producers bend to her will. With her stunning looks, she snagged wealth, luxury, and the adoration of countless men and women. Yet, there was one thing that she never could get that she longed for the most, which was love and this nagging feeling of feeling alone. She could never really feel that. She was born Germaine Lefebvre on January 6, 1928 in the picturesque south of France. Little Germaine was pampered by her affluent family. She came from a very wealthy family, but despite her lavish upbringing, she yearned for something more. The quaint town of Saint Raphael felt like a cage, stifling her dreams of becoming one of those dazzling stars she admired on the silver screen. Years later, she declared, and I quote, "I dreamed of being a movie star ever since I was a kid in Toulon." However, her ambitions were constantly thwarted by the heavy hand of her domineering parents. They had grand ideas for their daughter, and being a glamorous actress was not on their agenda. They envisioned her as a respectable school teacher or a bank clerk, spending her days surrounded by piles of numbers in their eyes. Acting was utterly beneath her, but that rebellious spirit went and struck her, and it coursed through her veins. "I knew I couldn't follow their rules," she admitted. She defiantly refused to be molded into their image of a proper lady. It's a twist of fate that turned this once awkward girl, often ridiculed as the ugly duckling, into one of the most breathtaking beauties of her time. Reflecting on her youth, she remembered being the girl who often stumbled, wearing egg on her face. By the age of 17, Germaine had emerged as a striking beauty with a chiseled face and a lithe figure that commanded attention. It was time to shed her unremarkable past. Upon moving to the vibrant streets of Paris, she underwent a dramatic transformation. "I was determined to erase every trace of my childhood," she said, loathing her common name, which she found as dull as dishwater. She adopted the glamorous moniker Capucine, inspired by the beautiful flower, and even claimed to be younger than her true age. Initially, her modeling gigs barely paid the bills, but capricious pride kept her from seeking help from her family. To survive, Capucine took a job as an MC on a cruise ship where she introduced performers and mingled with the elite. This was also when she forged lifelong friendships with the likes of Brigitte Bardot and Audrey Hepburn. Soon, the fashion world took notice of her captivating presence, and prestigious designers like Dior and Givenchy clamored to dress her. Capucine's world transformed as she journeyed across the globe, strutting her stuff in bustling cities like Buenos Aires, Vienna, Athens, Rome, Istanbul, Johannesburg, and even the exotic shores of Madagascar. Her ascent was nothing short of meteoric. But amidst the glamour, would she ever find the love that eluded her? Capucine was determined to make her mark in the glittering world of Hollywood, so while she strutted her stuff on runways in Paris, she took acting classes, convinced that fashion modeling might lead more to Tinseltown. Unfortunately, despite all her efforts, her acting chops turned out to be less than impressive. Her attempts landed her only a handful of no-name roles in French films that barely registered a blip on anyone's radar. When she finally touched down in New York with just a few connections and scant cash, the stakes got heightened. Enter Charles K. Feldman, her sugar daddy of Hollywood, okay? A sharp-eyed talent agent and producer who spotted her among the bustling city streets, and he was very powerful in the industry. He called the shots. He immediately sensed potential or he was simply smitten by her. Either way, he wasted no time signing her on and whisking her away to the land of dreams, aka Hollywood. Despite her polished background from French schools, there was one glaring issue. Capucine did not speak a word of English. In a landscape where silent films were no longer a thing, it was becoming a disaster and a deal breaker for her. But Capucine was undeterred. She was set on acting in English language movies. Can you imagine? She was seen as a little spoiled brat. Like, you knew you couldn't speak English, not a lick of English at that. But she was like, despite it all, I want to be in American movies. Feldman figured that with her striking beauty, she wouldn't even need to utter a word to captivate the audiences. He believed she could bring in the crowds just with her presence. And yeah, he was right for a time. So do you see why people started to hate her? Because a lot of people was like, as you see with all the videos that I've done for all the other stars, like the Marilyn Monroes, Rita Hayworth, and Ava Gardners, they all even had to take classes to get rid of their Southern accents, to speak properly. They had to learn English. Even if you were American, you couldn't have a Southern accent. People went through so much just for you to say, okay, this woman wasn't even really trying to learn English because of the way she looked and because the producer was in love with her. Then it was like, okay. And she was literally in movies, most of her earlier films, just there without saying a word. She was just sitting there and getting camera time. Like, she wasn't just sitting there as an extra. She was sitting there and getting camera time, barely speaking. Now that is a true definition of an industry plant, right? A screen test was arranged with film director Gregory Ratoff, and it was of course a silent one, but Capucine didn't need to say a word to evoke emotion. The camera loved her. Ratoff was so impressed that he decided to give her English lessons and acting pointers, a clear sign that she was on the brink of something. As her stardom approached, a little quirk popped up. Studios were worried about her single name branding. This was before, like, you had people like Cher, Madonna, Prince. Was no one that went by one name before. So Capucine stuck to it, and she was like, hey, let me be the first. I like that about her, though. She didn't care what the traditions were, what was going on. Listen, she came in Hollywood and said, I'm not bending to any of your rules. You guys are bending to my rules. Okay. And this was one of the reasons also that, especially during that time in Hollywood, it's been known that a lot of the stars that we have, I've done a couple videos on them. The name, I think, Mae West and a couple others too. Like, a lot of the stars were said to be like trans women or really man. Not saying that that's what it was for Capucine, but because like Mae West and all those other women, they were so like, they came in acting as authoritative and matter of fact as men would, because the women would come into Hollywood during that time very meek, very submissive, very like, okay, whatever you say. But there was always these group of women that behind the scenes were actually trans women, were really bold and no, I'm not doing this, I'm doing that. And then men would just bend to their will. Like they'd get no pushback from the meanest directors. There'll be directors that are mean, atrocious to all the other women. But with these women in particular, they bend to their will. And it's like, oh, what's going on here? So that's where I think a lot of those rumors were coming to. People just assumed she's getting away with so much, like barely going through any etiquette classes, language classes, or anything like that, getting scenes, airtime, all of this luxury, because behind the scenes, comment below your thoughts on that. But that's a real theory. There was really papers written about this for her in her lifetime. And she even made jokes and about it. And when articles were written about it, she'll give her sentence, like she'll make fun, like, oh, when I was a man, there's an article out there I believe she wrote that was titled When I Was Meant, kind of trolling before trolling was a thing, right? The break she had been waiting for finally arrived. Against all odds, the rising star beat out 100 other actresses for the coveted role of Princess Caroline in the 1960 film song Without End. However, it wasn't just her acting ability or newfound language skills that clinched the role. William Goetz, the film's producer, later spilled the tea on why Capucine snagged such a huge part. You can't teach a girl to act, but nobody can teach her how to look like a princess. You need to pick a girl who already looks the part, he revealed. The buzz around Capucine was electric. Whispers echoed from the tabloids claiming Hollywood had unearthed its next Ingrid Bergman or Greta Garbo. But behind the scenes, life was far from regal. Once on set, her dream quickly descended into a nightmare. During the filming of Song Without End, tragedy struck when the director Charles Vidor suddenly died of a heart attack. But the drama didn't end there. Vidor had a notorious reputation for his fiery temperament. He often lashed out at Capucine, even going so far as to shake her like a rag doll during heated moments. Like, he literally put hands on her while he was filming with her, telling her to calm down, etc. His frustration might have had a silver of justification. Capucine once lamented about how hollow it sounded for a foreign actress to parrot scripts phonetically while grasping at the meaning. So people were literally telling her the words to say. At that time, she still hadn't yet grasped the English language. So they'll tell her the words, each cue card, and then she'll just, repeat what was said, but not really understanding what it means. So this is what she said. I didn't really understand what I was saying, and I had to deliver these lines. So the director was frustrated in her, not justifying him putting hands on her. But can you imagine? He has no choice but to work with her because the powers that be wanted her there. And we have to feed her these lines. She don't even know what they mean. So oftentimes he'd get so frustrated, like, shake her, just get it. But a lot of people said a lot was going behind the scenes because he made her life such a living, hell, that eventually, oddly enough, there was some suspicion around that film because he just ended up dying from a heart attack. And people was like, what happened behind the scenes? You know how dark it was in Hollywood during that time. Was it really a heart attack that made him die? What was being done behind the scenes? Because conveniently for her, he just was no longer an issue for her. And then the next director that came on, well, let's talk about it. So Capucine eventually finished a movie under the guidance of the legendary George Cukor, who spared her the harsh treatment Vidor, lashed out on her. And Cukor was gentle with her, calm, and a lot of people said he was just scared. He didn't want to die of a heart attack. So he was just really kind to her and didn't want issues with nobody else. However, the damage was done. Critics weren't exactly rolling out the red carpet for her Hollywood debut. I got shredded by the reviews, she admitted, realizing that stardom in Hollywood come with its own set of treacherous pitfalls. So people kind of could tell there was no emotion behind the words that she was saying. And it was because she didn't yet understand the English language. I don't think she was a bad actress. I think she get a lot of criticism for being a bad actress because she didn't understand the language. Because later on in her life, as she started to really grasp the English language, she was actually a pretty good actress. But people caught on to that on film and was like ripping her to shreds. So it turned out the director, Vidor, was actually not wrong in being frustrated with the film, and it that sucks for the rest of the actors and actresses that, probably was putting their whole heart and soul into this. Comment below your thoughts on this. I'm curious. As Charles K. Feldman had predicted, her stunning looks were her golden ticket to box office success. Critics were quick to point out her glacial beauty, with one even likening her to an icy remote icicle. So critics were like, yeah, she's beautiful, but she looks cold, icy. There's no warmth in her eyes, her tone, or anything like that. Capucine's peculiar take on acting might help explain her critical failure. In a revealing 1960 interview, she confessed, "I see the camera as a handsome man I'm meeting for the first time. I feel he's demanding and aloof, so I must do everything to catch his interest," end quote. Somehow, her frosty allure must have intrigued someone because despite the scathing reviews, she kept snagging roles and opportunities, and she won a Golden Globe nomination for her role in Song Without End. So even though critics hated her in the film, viewers hated her in the film, she still won a Golden Globe for it. Can you imagine how that makes the other actors and actresses start to feel? Okay. Next up for Capucine was North to Alaska, where she took on the role of a working girl, an odd choice for an actress often held for her regal beauty. The film's director, Richard Fleischer, thought Capucine was all wrong for the part, but producer Feldman wasn't having any of it. He taught Fleischer aside and insisted on casting her anyway, making it clear where his true loyalties were. So it was like they couldn't fire her. They just could not fire her. There's nothing they could do. Okay. The dynamic on set was tense, with cast and crew raising eyebrows at Feldman's unwavering dedication to Capucine, his obsession with landing her roles and award nominations, despite her obvious lack of talent, raised suspicions from a lot of people. It didn't take long for rumors to fly. Capucine wasn't just his protege, she was his live-in girlfriend, keeping him wrapped around her perfectly manicured finger. How much she truly loved him was up for debate, but she certainly knew how to drain him dry for every opportunity, and people were starting to get really annoyed. After a fleeting trip back to France, Capucine swooped into another one of Feldman's productions, the 1962 film Walk on the Wild Side. Yet again, she was cast as a reformed working woman, but this time not everyone was charmed by her connection to Feldman. Her co-star Lawrence Harvey grew frustrated as he realized Feldman was trimming his roles to give Capucine more screen time. In a twist, Capucine threw out complaints about a romantic scene between them, claiming Harvey wasn't man enough to handle her. Harvey shot back, "Maybe if you were more of a woman, I would be more of a man. Kissing you is like kissing the side of a beer bottle." Ouch. Feldman was practically infatuated with Capucine, referring to her affectionately as Cappy and treating her like his personal doll. He even insisted she wear the latest couture gowns while filming Walk on the Wild Side, despite it being a period piece. And so even the costume designers now for the set couldn't even do their job properly because, hey, we have to make everybody wear what she wants them to wear. It was crazy. Sadly, her stilled performance continued to overshadow the film's success and raised serious concerns about her future in acting. As the pressure mounted, Feldman realized he couldn't keep supporting Capucine's career forever unless she learned to act, because people were starting to discredit him. He was looking crazy out here. So even though he had all this power, he was getting no respect, because it's like, dude, you're seriously putting someone on the map who's clearly sucks to everybody. That's how, I don't mean to talk about her like that, but that's what was out there. That was the criticism of the time. So something that didn't seem likely anytime was for her to become a good actress. So in a moment of desperation, he pawned her off to his friend, the well-known actor William Holden, for the 1962 film The Lion. And that was one of my favorite movies, and watching with her had a great storyline. But what Feldman didn't foresee was that this would spell the end of his hold on Capucine. While filming in Kenya, everything seemed to be going smoothly until Holden's wife stormed on set, starting an argument with him. And everyone was like shocked and was wondering why the wife just came on set starting an argument. And sure enough, it was because Capucine was having an affair with Holden. And so everyone was shocked because Holden and Feldman were best friends. They were like really, really great friends. So it's like, man, I gave you this girl to help her and you end up being with her. So he did later apologize to Feldman for, he admitted to being with Capucine and apologized. And his wife also. He told his wife he regretted it, got back with his wife. Holden's feelings weren't as deep as they could have been at the moment. He later told Feldman that she's marvelously ornamental when her mouth is shut. He said that basically she's a beautiful woman until she opens her mouth and starts to talk. So he wasn't too interested in her. While Feldman found it in his heart to forgive Holden, he did forgive his friend. He was less forgiving towards Capucine. One insider claimed that what ended her romance with Charlie Feldman, if this scandal was the scandal, basically. If this scandal hadn't happened, he might have stayed with her. Despite her dwindling relationship, Feldman still retained the belief that he had a star in Capucine and continued to throw her into more films. He still was nice to her. Feldman was the puppet master behind Capucine's string of desirable roles, and without him, she was left to rely solely on her looks. But in May 1968, the tide turned dramatically. Feldman's life was cut short by pancreatic cancer, and suddenly Capucine found herself unceremoniously adrift without his guidance. Legendary director Federico Fellini declared that she had a face to launch 1,000 ships, but she was born too late, which was his way of saying she was all looks and no substance. Yikes. Rumors swirled that she was a diva on set, making her a nightmare for directors tasked with her case. And a lot of directors said, she was spoiled and she was lovely in the face. And then when she opened her mouth, it was just mean and spoiled. And she was just not a pleasant person to have on set for directors or for the cast and crew. With Feldman gone, Capucine's dreams of landing challenging roles crumbled, and people were just not willing to work with her now without her big honcho daddy backing her up. The directors only see me as a model. They can't envision me as anything else, she lamented, desperate for someone to give her a shot based on her beauty. Unfortunately, even that hope evaporated when she attempted to break into the European film scene. One director, Luchino Visconti, brutally quipped about her. She has a horrible voice and too many teeth. She looks like a horse, a beautiful horse. I know that as I was a trainer, but I don't want a horse, end quote. You couldn't get more cutting than that. And I know that sounds so mean, and y'all like, oh my goodness, green. That was very mean, but even overseas, she already built up a reputation of being like a spoiled brat and built up a reputation of being put on because of a man that even the directors had animosity with. Like, her reputation preceded her. So people were just harsher, especially overseas, towards her, especially once he was gone. It was like, oh, now we can freely express ourselves because her protection is gone. While Capucine's feelings for either Feldman or Holden are somewhat murky, one thing is clear: she only walked down the aisle once. Back in 1950, before her Hollywood saga began, she married Pierre Trebaud, a French actor, and her co-star Rendezvous. However, the union lasted a mere 8 months, and Capucine never ventured into marriage again. And after she ended up, jumping off the apartment building, a year later, he did end up taking his own life also from depression. Her ex-husband. As her career waned, whispers of scandal started swirling, with rumors claiming Capucine had come out as being, into women. There was little evidence to back it up, though it clashed with the heartbreak felt by the lovesick Feldman. With her influential producer gone, Capucine faded further from the Hollywood scene. She retreated to Switzerland, taking on whatever small roles came her way. These were far from the glamorous features she had once fantasized about as a child, but while audiences may have moved on, her lovers had forgot her. Decades after their messy love triangle dissolved, both Feldman and Holden continued to carry a torch for Capucine. When they passed away, she inherited hefty sums from each of their estates. So she inherited from Feldman, before he died, $75,000, which was equivalent to $678,000 in today's time. And she inherited $50,000 from Holden, which is equivalent to around $173,000 today. And Holden was the one that said she was pretty when her mouth was shut, but somehow he still left her money before he died. So they were still creeping around, right? It wasn't the romantic love she longed for, but it was a stark reminder that even through their chaotic relationship, they cared for her in their own way. As Capucine embraced a life away from the spotlight, she became something of a recluse. Neighbors noted that she rarely left her Lucerne apartment, finding solace in the company of her 3 cats and becoming a quiet fixture in the community. The world eventually forgot about her until the tragic day of her death in March 1990 at the age of 62, which is very young. Capucine leaped from her 8th floor balcony, and the police confirmed a heartbreaking conclusion. Her death was ruled a S, basically. I can't say the word for YouTube. In her final moments, surrounded by silence and memories, Capucine hoped to escape a world that had long neglected her despite her past as a dazzling star. This is the story of Capucine. Comment below, what are your thoughts? She was one of the first French industry plants where, yeah, that's pretty interesting, but that was a thing even before we knew what that was. Comment below your thoughts. What do you think about this? And comment below who else would you guys like to see a video from. I love you guys so much. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you in the next one.